Well, we're a couple of days away from that Scorpio new moon. Are you ready for it? It's time for another episode of the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Lori Rivers, your host. And we're going to play around with a couple of recording areas in my new digs. Yeah, that's right, I've been moving. We'll talk about that, what that means for the Awake Space, what that means for you. I already know what it means for me. It's kind of cool. So we've got all of that going on. And of course, as always, big thanks to my patrons at the Awake Space on Patreon. Without them, this podcast wouldn't be possible. So we will also do our shout outs. So let's talk about that new moon. All right, let's talk about November and this new moon that we have on November 5th. This is where the energy really ramps up. Now, I told you the brakes went off in October. November is where the roller coaster really starts speeding up. Now, as of the last couple of days, a lot of news has started to break. China's telling people to buy supplies. There's the energy crisis. These are news stories that are just kind of sneaking out. The mainstream media in the United States is notorious for directing narrative in one or two directions and not giving us a whole picture. Okay, which it's so funny because everybody's been so trained to watch the news, to be informed. Yeah, well, you're being misinformed 90% of the time, you know, and I don't care which news service it is you're watching. I don't care what TV channel, what radio station. What you have are a lot of broadcast entertainers drumming up emotional states. And the real news, it always has been the case. It kind of sneaks out here and there in small little articles and not the fringe press. You know, you'll find it through Reuters or AP. Once in a while, it'll sneak through Bloomberg. Not as much Bloomberg, but once in a while. Yeah, if you watch the business news. And so our whole system is very fragile and delicate, and that's everything from economics, the whole economic system, but our supply chains and how we live our lives is a fragile system that has been under strain for quite a long time. And people can go on about late-stage capitalism all they want. I mean, it's been around for a while. But those intellectual viewpoints, okay, those intellectual, philosophical, political talking points are almost a distraction from what is necessary at this point in time. And that what is necessary at this point in time is innovate the hell out of your life. You cannot expect to live your life the way it has always been lived. And in fact, I will argue how we've been living in the last 100 years especially, it's not how it's always been lived. Okay. I had a thought that I will be writing a follow-up article to my Pluto return article explaining what the U.S. Revolution was actually all about. And it was actually all about the control of resources. Why is this important? Because we're heading towards the U.S. Revolution return. So colonialization had been a big deal for about 200 years leading up to the U.S. Revolution. And what colonialization was about resources. Okay, it was economic. And they used religion as a tool to subdue and conquer indigenous peoples, just like the indigenous peoples of Europe had been conquered as well. It's one of the reasons I've never liked the emphasis on ancient Greece in Western culture, ancient Greece and Rome. Because, and I think it's because, like, if you look at my DNA, I have a large amount of generally Northwestern European, meaning, tribal European. And, maybe it's genetic memory or something of like those damn Greeks and Romans. They were always conquering people. But I always felt there was an overemphasis. There's so many cultures in the world, and we focus on these two. And astrology has been practiced by many, many cultures. I focus on Western tropical astrology, which has its origins in Mesopotamia. And I practice modern, progressive, evolutionary astrology because I think Hellenistic astrology is steeped in patriarchy. And even the modern astrology, the medieval astrology, it carried that forward too. And so for me, it's looking at the history of how things evolved, how we got here. And so we are still battling over resources, okay? And we have a very global economy, and the division between the haves and have-nots has gotten wider and wider, especially in the last 4 decades. And the chickens are coming home to roost. They're coming home to roost. And those in power are trying to hold on to power. And governments are full of people invested in their positions. And so they are less likely to do the right thing. And we are sitting in a time of needed, rapid adaptation to a majorly changing landscape. That is my dog, Malcolm. Those are his inside barks, if you're hearing those. So, with this Pluto return coming up, the energy is going to keep building. We are probably not going to have another revolution, not with muskets or guns or tanks or airplanes. But it will be financial. And it's really funny. Back in 1989, the head of my department, who was a phenomenal international lawyer who argued at The Hague, which means he would argue at the International Court of Justice. Anyway, he had us all write a 20-year political prediction, forecast of what we thought the world would look like. Because in 1989, that was a huge time of change. All you babies born in the early 90s, late 80s, you were born in the time that was cyclically preceding where we're at today, kind of displaying and showing the cracks in the system. And so I predicted that multinational corporations would basically be in charge, and own the governments and be trading countries' resources like we traded stocks on the stock market. And it's pretty much come to pass. And that they owed no allegiance to any one people, unlike a government is supposed to. And so the situation of the common person was going to decrease. Okay. And I got laughed at. They thought I was a conspiracy theorist. And I was like, no, just look at the facts, especially as this was when people were beginning to really postulate about centralized supply chain, and moving things to different labor markets, around the world. And I was like, that's just foolish. And in the 2000s, we witnessed a lot of manufacturing be moved from its traditional spaces, not just in the U.S., other countries as well. And We put ourselves in vulnerability. Food supply should always be a national security issue. Always. And as much as people get upset about factory farming of meat, we've really screwed up with plant farming. We're in, the diversity is gone. The monoculture is not only devastating for our diets, it's devastating for the soil it's grown in, and requires a lot of synthetic fertilizers, etc. And so, we've really messed up. And that is why, if you go back through my blog posts, I've been urging you to grow your food for a long time. You don't have to grow a lot of food to help yourself. You want to be able to grow some. And I have a wonderful patio in my new house, and I will be filling that patio with vegetables, And so I'll have you follow along on my journey. I live by myself, so I don't need a ton, but I have neighbors, and not everybody knows how to do this. So, you think, did I digress? No, I didn't. This is the world we live in. We have to pay attention to our food supply, because not only have we centralized it, and we do a lot of exporting and importing of food, we are also looking at the effects of climate change. And that's going to impact things. China's dealing with that right now. So things are going to get interesting. On a mundane level, the Scorpio new moon is really going to rock the global economy. And we are going to see that we are incredibly fragile because of this new moon. And this energy is going to ring out until the Scorpio full moon in May. So between now and May of 2022, we are going to see a rocky financial market. Now, for those of you who have had readings with me, and you've asked me about the housing market, I've said I see it degrading in 2022. And so Zillow got caught buying up houses and driving up the property market, and now they're down like 23% because the jig is up, and they've started laying off people. I think they laid off 300 workers or something. So those chickens are going to come to roost in 2022 as well. So we're going to see inflation. We're going to see more disruption of the supply chain. And there's going to be a lot of hand-wringing. There's going to be, from leaders, whatever do we do? Look to the billionaires. And that is just, fuck. Pardon me. I'm like, that couldn't be more stupid than I can think of. So on an individual level, what can you do? Be as autonomous as possible. You want to be as self-sufficient as you can be. And interdependence is going to make you stronger. You want to have a small group of people that you can trust and that you can share information and goods with. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. There's always ways to take advantage of these types of times. You don't always have to hit the struggle bus. And for those of you who have struggled in life, this time period will not be the worst in your life. In fact, you'll be able to surf it pretty well. People who haven't had to make do or be innovative in their lives are going to probably have the most struggle. People who were really good at checking off the boxes and living conventionally and conforming are going to have a much harder time making it through the next couple of years. So if you're a weirdo who has never been able to fit in, lucky you, it's your time. So let's talk about November. We'll do that in the next segment. We'll talk more about November. I've got to recalibrate because this is such big energy we're moving into, guys. I don't want you to be freaked out. I just want you to be ready. Those of you who've been following along with me since 2020, you know, when I tell you to get ready, I ain't kidding. And I am so tickled when you guys get a hold of me saying you're prepared. Makes me feel like I've done my job. So for all of you who have listened and done what you could to get as ready as you can, thank you for listening. So next segment, we're going to talk about November. So let's talk about that new moon. Let's talk about that new moon. It is a doozy. For the new moon to be exactly opposed Uranus, that's, again, we can just count our freaking lucky stars that Uranus is retrograde. Because if it was direct, oh my God, that would be just like a massive earthquake, big economic fallout. It'd be huge. We're not going to have that with this because, again, Uranus is retrograde. So we are definitely going to see seismic and volcanic action. No, there isn't going to be a giant tsunami that takes out the East Coast. In fact, there's no real science behind that theory. That theory was debunked by actual geologists. I went and looked it up. So that's something you could do. Don't just buy into something because somebody says so, including me. Go look it the hell up. Go find a credible resource, okay? I know that's harder with astrology because there's so much pop astrology out there that people keep repeating the same damn thing. This morning in Discord, McDubs put up a meme about Saturn returns. And somebody said, oh, it starts the minute Saturn enters the sign, which is not true. I don't know who's giving out that information, but that's bullshit. That isn't how astrology works. A return is when a planet moves exactly through transit to the place where it was at birth. Okay. Until it is in an actual conjunction, which is within an orb, a degree of orb, you are not in your Saturn return. Just not. You are not. That is not how it works. Okay. Astrology is about the math. And I know there's a whole lot of, well, it's easier to do it this way. Just because it's easy doesn't mean it's right. Come on. My Pluto in Virgo is about ready to start smacking people. All right? There's an exactitude that comes with being an astrologer. It's not about horseshoes and hand grenades, okay? So this is stuff we've got going on. This new moon is powerful. And like I mentioned in the last segment, we've got economic fallout happening with it because Uranus is in Taurus. It is retrograde. This is going to really be showing the man behind the curtain, okay? The wizard is being revealed as a charlatan. And no, I'm not talking about any one particular person or any one particular politician. It's not about, people love to give all the power to the president. And this has been a marketing campaign over especially the last 80 years. They are not the most powerful person. They have a lot of power, but we have a government that is made up of 3 co-equal branches. Okay. And what we don't have are those branches doing their job, holding each other accountable. And that was the flaw in the system that got exploited in the last administration and continues to be exploited, in that people are not being held accountable for their actions. And people also have not been educated because, since the 1980s, the school boards were infiltrated by people who had an agenda to move us into, a theocracy. And so people have been kept ignorant about how the system actually works. So unless you are a civics and politics geek like me, a lot of people don't know because they weren't taught and they didn't even know where to look up the information. So when I say, when young people are asking me, what can we do? Get involved in your local freaking politics. Get on the school board, get on the planning board, get on the water board, get, the PUD, whatever board you can get on. If there is an open seat, get your ass in it. Fight people for political positions, because at the local level, it's really where the buck stops. We saw that during the pandemic. Get involved in your local and state politics. Do it. And I don't just mean leading protests. If you're going to community organize, then actually do community organizing, not just rallying people to show up on a day, but, work on getting food to people, work on making sure people can keep their lights and their power on, collectivize, make some community economic projects. There's so much you can do to mitigate the economic disaster that is looming ahead, which is going to cause unrest. And we could flip that script and actually make this a really amazing time period that innovates our economy. So the more active and involved you are, the better. Like, I'm just trying to get settled, and then I'm going to see what I can do in my local area. I want to support young people being involved, because the last thing we need is another gray-haired person making decisions when they're not in tune with the actual reality of how life is. So there's that. So I think some of that energy is what you're going to see. The moon's still in Libra as I speak, and the Mercury is square Pluto. So you see, I'm fired up. But guys, we can't afford to wait for someone else to do it. And if you identify as female, especially, stop waiting to be equal. Stop waiting to be promoted. Stop waiting to shoot your shot. Stop underqualifying yourself for everything. We can't afford that either. We're looking at a massive loss of our rights that were tenuous to start with. Not having the ERA really screwed us over. And so you can't wait for somebody to say you're equal. Just fucking be equal. Go out and take it. Okay? I'm going to say something very controversial, and it's going to be contra what most people think of as spiritual. And I'm not advocating violence. I'm not. I'm just postulating. If you wanted, in places where women are certainly beyond less equal, instead of just educating, because when the men are uneducated and violent towards women, educating the women just really kind of reinforces to them how screwed they are. I'm not saying don't educate people. I think education is a key. But shit, if you just handed them some weapons and trained them, they could speak a language those jerks understand, and that would probably stop things faster. I know it's not a traditional spiritual thought, but I'm kind of, at my Libra moon is like, you know what? Bring it to balance. Get the equalizer. But don't do it. Don't do it. Don't get in trouble. It's not worth it. But don't put up with shit, okay? Don't put up with shit. Don't wait around to be asked. Step it up. Get involved. Don't wait for somebody to discover you or help you out, because you're going to be waiting a long time. Very long time. So that's me on my soapbox. I'm going to step down now and let's talk about November. The astrology of November is pretty wild. We talked about in the last segment, I said the brakes were off in October. So here comes the fast part of the roller coaster ride until December 24th, when the brakes slam. So we're going to move fast, fast, fast. Oh no, oh no, oh no. And then boom, stop. Okay. So November's astrology. We've got Mars is Scorpio. The new moon happens on the 4th. The sun will be in opposition to Uranus, of course, because the new moon happens the same day. We've got Mercury square Pluto until the 3rd. Mercury ingress is into Scorpio on the 3rd/4th. It depends. It's late at night. Venus ingresses into Capricorn on the 5th. This is all about economics, guys. On a mundane level, Venus ingressing into Capricorn is going to look at the global economy. And she will be conjuncting Pluto. There is no such thing as a bad Venus transit. Okay, on long term, that Venus-Pluto conjunction is very beneficial for us, but immediately it might not feel so good. On a personal level, man, those are powerful manifestation days, and I'll talk more about those later down the line. Mars will be square Saturn on the 8th. Mercury will be conjunct Mars on the 8th. That's going to be more economic news. Mercury square Saturn, that's again, transportation, infrastructure. We're just going to see a lot of problems. Probably going to see like a container ship have an issue that day. Sun will be square Jupiter on the 16th. That could be some seismic activity or even another big solar flare. Taurus full moon on the 19th. And I'll talk about that as we get closer to it. Venus trine Uranus on the 19th. Mercury square Pluto on the 20th. Mercury sextile Pluto on the 20th. That's a big day as well. Again, we're looking at infrastructure on those days. Roadways, bridges, transportation, again, supply chain, logistics, should be interesting. And we're heading towards the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. With Mars in Scorpio, that's going to be its own debacle on the 29th. Sun ingress Sagittarius on the 21st or 22nd. It's very late at night on the West Coast, so 22nd for most of the rest of the world. Mercury ingresses into Sagittarius on the 22nd. Mars is trine Neptune on the 28th. Very fascinatingly, it will be also on the 29th, which is the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and Sun is conjunct Mercury on the 29th. They did not offer her a plea deal. It will be interesting to see what comes out during that trial. So, but that is the mundane things we're looking at. On a personal level, if you want to fly through this cosmic tide, if you want to wail on your board, you have got to be willing to let go of self-indulgent attachment to the things that hold you back. So when you're overly focused on the past, if you have a lot of stories around what your past did for you and how it's holding you back now, you need to let go of that and turn your attention and focus on which direction you want to go. You cannot look at the past and create your future. You will just get more of the same thing. That's why it's different faces, same scenario, right? Different words, same song. Different person, same relationship. Is because the more you're feeding those thoughts, the more your brain's looking for those scenarios. Your brain does what you tell it to. So you've got to turn your focus, and it can be tough. I know, me too. You have to turn your focus to the direction you do want to go. And if you believe you don't have enough time, you don't have enough help, people will never support you. You always pick the rotten ones. You're always too late. You're never on time. All of those thoughts are what's in your way. And I'm not telling you to fake it till you make it. I'm telling you to turn your attention to the direction you want to go. And then take a step. take a step. You don't have to take giant steps. You can take, although I just don't think baby steps are necessary. I just don't. But turn your attention. Instead of looking at what you don't have, take an inventory of what you do have. You may not have a lot of money. You don't always need a lot of money to be successful at things. That's a lie. You're not going to automatically become a billionaire or even a millionaire, but you could make yourself comfortable. But not if you're always talking about how you struggle, because that's just going to produce more of the same, because your brain will not be freed up to find the solutions you need. Never fear. I will be having some business and career astrology resources for you coming soon. Not right now, but soon. 2022. I'll be able to help you out. You don't always need a lot of money to get started, but you do need skills. And you have to be able to give the time. But there's lots of ways to make a little bit of extra. We also want to look at repurposing. The Scorpio new moon is really good for like refinishing, repurposing, restoration. Buying new stuff is cool, but taking care of things that already exist and refinishing them is also very cool. But that's where we stand. Next up, we're going to do patron shout-outs. All right, it's time for a patron shout-out. The patrons make this podcast possible, and I am forever grateful for their patronage. We have Devin, Jennifer, Kayla, Aaron, Liam, Caitlin, Erie, Melania, Zach, Susan, Sarah, Natasha, Angie, Emily, Jennifer, Krista, Alexis, Nicole, Danielle, Rebecca, Sharon, Marissa, Becky, Tara, John, REG, Denise, Michael, Jen, Susan, and Alyssa. These are the newest patrons. And if you want to be a patron, go ahead and hit the link in the description. You can sign up. There's a couple different tiers. I try to keep it really accessible. We've got Coffee with Lori coming up this Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Guys, make sure you are looking at your links. If you are a Mystic Muse, I'll get that notice out probably before Saturday. I'm still moving, so I want to thank everybody for their patience in this it was an expected move. Like, I knew I wanted to move, but finding the place and getting the place, and then there was no real ability to plan. So thank you all for your patience. The horoscopes for the Scorpio moon are up in Patreon and on the website. You guys can access those there. If you're a patron, just go to Patreon or check your email. Let's see what's going on in the Discord. Lively discussions all over the place in the Discord. You got to remember, the moon is intense right now in Scorpio. And when I started recording this, it was in Libra, but it's been a crazy busy time, so we're just finishing it up now. But once again, my absolute gratitude goes to my right hand, Chris. She is a moderator, but also she's my assistant and makes sure that the links get to everybody for the recordings of the readings and all that other fun stuff. And then my moderators, you want to get a hold of them for things to do with the Discord. They don't run anything on Patreon, but they can answer questions to the best of their ability. If not, they'll get a hold of me. Make sure you're tagging them. I am really doing a whole lot, so it's better to tag them in general. If you're looking for, horoscope information or have a question about readings, things like that, they can tell you where to find the links, etc. And those people are Sister Luck, who is Kathy, Casey, and Yogi Hannah. They'll get a hold of me, and I'll be able to respond either through them or on the Discord. But things are about to get a whole lot busier. Dun, dun, dun. And so it's not always easy for me to reach out in person. So once again, I want to thank you all for your patronage. If I'm not responding to you directly, get a hold of a mod. That's easy enough. So let's take a look at the rest of the November astrology. It's really important that you guys be ready and be prepared. Again, all kinds of weather events, supply chain shortages. These things are all happening because we need to innovate. And one of the things you can do is innovate in your own life. That means mindset. Okay, mindset is everything, because it's from the mindset that then we can find solutions. And being a solution thinker is what's going to get us through this stuff. And it is a wild and wacky ride as we finalize these last few years of the Pluto and Capricorn transit, and then enter the much longer Pluto and Aquarius transit. And we're looking at abrupt change with this new moon, guys. We're looking at abrupt change. That can be good change. It doesn't have to be bad change. It's all in your attitude. Seriously, I cannot emphasize that enough. So let's talk about the rest of November in the next segment. All right, so October was when the brakes went off and the momentum started to build, and we started the vertical dive. Now we're sliding fast, we're sliding hard. There's going to be some interesting stuff, including this new moon falls on President Biden's Mars. That could mean a health issue. That could mean political losses, possibly, but it could be, but it'll be long-term gains. So it may look like he loses a battle, but it could end up being a long-term gain to his political agenda. There's some interesting stuff that's going to be coming out. We've got secrets coming out in the news with this moon in Scorpio. And it really sets kind of the tone for November. I really suggest, if you haven't gotten yourself ready for winter, do it. It doesn't matter where you live, there's going to be strange weather. Now, the Southwest is going to remain dry in general. We may have a few, storms here and there, but it's not going to be enough to end the drought in the West. I mean, it'll mitigate things, but we're still going to be drier than we want to be. Let's see what's up next. Let me take a look. So it's a very active astrological climate in November. Let's see. That's why I was trying to get moved as fast as I could, because I was like, oh my gosh, there's just not a better time to do this. So again, we've got Mars in Scorpio. We've got the Scorpio new moon that happens on the 4th. The sun, of course, is opposite Uranus because the moon is opposite Uranus. As well, in that new moon, we have Mercury squaring off with Pluto. Well, it's done. It's moving into... Should have moved into Scorpio by now. Let me check my handy dandy software. It should have. Yeah, it did. It's 1:30 in the morning, so it did. It was probably right around the time my phone would not stop ringing. I had calls from all over the world today. My God, they started around the time the moment Mercury got out of that square to my square. I am relieved that Mercury is out of freaking Libra, because that's square to Pluto while Pluto is opposing my Mercury and my Sun. It was just like, can't communicate, can't do it. So yeah, that all makes sense now. I was in the middle of writing and I was trying to get everything done, and it was just like people that I hadn't talked to in forever and actually needed to communicate with, so I couldn't be like, no, I'm writing, leave me alone. So it was pretty funny. So we've got Mars, Mercury ingresses into Scorpio. It already has. Venus ingresses into Capricorn on the 5th. That's where we're going to see some real economic interesting deals. Mercury is conjunct Mars on the 8th, and Mars is square Saturn on the 8th. That is going to be some fascinating energy, so stay tuned for podcast episodes and horoscopes around that stuff. Let's see, we've got the Sun square Jupiter. We've got the Taurus full moon on the 19th. I'll talk about that more as we get closer into it. And Venus is trine Uranus on that day as well. That could be some real interesting economic news. Again, on a personal level, that's really great manifestation energy. On a collective level, that's just going to be fascinating. I want to see how long China can try to prop up its economy. It's just getting more and more interesting, and the fact that they've been warning their people to like make sure they have extra provisions, etc., that just tells me like stuff is already sliding south. Let's see, we've got Mercury square Jupiter on the 20th. We've got Mercury sextile Pluto on the 20th. This is just, it's going to be interesting news days. That's a lot of interesting communication and secrets revealed. Again, Sun ingresses into Sag on the 21st, and Mercury, it might be the 22nd, depending on where you live. And then Mercury ingresses into Sag on the 22nd. Mars trines Neptune on the 28th. And that is really fascinating. The Sun is conjunct Mercury on the 29th. So I don't know if you guys know, but the Ghislaine-Maxwell trial is happening on the 29th. So Mars trines Neptune and Sun conjunct Mercury for the Ghislaine-Maxwell trial. Very, very fascinating astrology. We will see what happens and what upsets happen with that. They did not accept the plea deal. So that is going to be really, really fascinating. So it's a busy, busy month. I don't want you guys to go, oh no, what's going to happen to me? Oh no. You know what? What happens to you is often, and I'm not talking about physical accidents or, unfortunate events somewhere out of your control, but there's a lot in your control. Okay, a lot of the conversations I was having today was people looking for outside validation and looking for, people to recognize them in some way. But the thing is they don't really recognize themselves. On one hand, they do, but they weren't making the strides to kind of take life into their own hands. They were still waiting for that person or persons that they were having problems with to, make the move or change. And that doesn't happen. No, it does. It's just like having triggers. Nobody is going to walk around with trigger warnings. You have triggers. You're responsible for those. And I know that sounds cold-hearted, but it's not. Okay? Take it from somebody who had an immense amount of trauma in their life. The day I realized that it didn't matter how much I wanted the world to stop and be gentle and not trigger the living hell out of me, the day I realized that my triggers were mine and that I needed to deal with them, that's when I took my power back. Because asking the rest of the world to stop is putting the power in the world's hands, and it's saying I'm powerless to do anything about my own wellness, and you're not. You have so much more power. And I'm not telling you to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. I know how freaking hard it is. I spent 30 years healing. Okay? I've had a good 10 years where I've been happy and healthy and whole and just building my life one little step at a time, because I finally got to the place where I had that peace inside that you need, and it's interesting to go through it. And the one thing that held me back, and this is this energy of the Scorpio moon, the one thing that held me back was the over contemplation on the past. Like constantly replaying the past, constantly going over the old grievances, wanting revenge, wanting to get my pound of flesh. And I'm not saying you need to forgive people, because I haven't necessarily forgiven anybody. Forgiveness is kind of a mug's game. What I did is I put my focus on myself and what I wanted out of life. I actually just was like, you know what? I'm never going to get justice. I'm never going to get my pound of flesh. I'm going to leave them to their karma, and I'm going to try to just focus on building me. And when I did that, it was amazingly liberating. And it was also very, very hard road to get there. But so don't think for a second that I'm being cold or callous or unfeeling. If you have these triggers or traumas, I'm not diminishing them. I understand at a very, very deep core level how very, very hard it can be. But I can also tell you from experience, the day you turn your attention inward and you decide, you know what, I didn't make this mess, but I want to live my life, and I want it to be joyful and peaceful and, reasonably content was where I started. I didn't even think about joy. I was just like, hey, I'd like to be reasonably content, reasonably happy. I wasn't shooting for the moon. Okay. I was shooting for, reasonably content. And once I got to reasonably content, I was like, okay, this is pretty good. Now what would mostly happy look like? And what would be sometimes joyful, And so it gets better and better, and it's kind of like walking up steps. You don't have to do baby steps. Sometimes I run 2 steps at a time. Not gonna lie, I have Mars and Sag. But yeah, so this is this energy of November. It's going to be hard. It's going to be fast. And you're going to be having to adapt rapidly. This new moon is abrupt change. It's abrupt change. And you need to have the mindset to set the intentions to move you forward. This energy will ring out until the Scorpio full moon in May. Okay, it rings out to the Scorpio full moon in May. So you want to do some strategic planning. You want to look at, this is what I want to do. Don't think about how you're not qualified. Don't think about, I don't have all the resources. I don't have any money. There's a lot of things you can do that doesn't take a whole lot of money that helps you generate income. We live in a world of technology now. If you want to reject technology, have at it. But you could also leverage it to help move yourself forward. And I'm going to say, if you really want to move forward in the coming decade, if you're not tech savvy, if you reject it, it's going to be very hard to make it work. Okay, we're not going to lose tech. We're not going to lose electricity. We're going to have outages. We're going to have some power disruptions, but we're not going to lose it all the way. Okay, we're not going back to the Stone Age. That's not happening. However, I think it's going to be kind of a hybrid of things. I think we're going to have a lot of tech, but then we also are going to lose a lot of our convenient stuff, like the plastics and what have you. I think, in fact, God, I hope we get rid of single-use plastics. But anywho, folks, that is the podcast for the moon in Scorpio and the new moon in Scorpio, which happens today, November 4th. Set out, write your intentions. You can't really get it wrong. I look forward to hearing what happens for you. This is really, really powerful stuff, life-changing stuff. And you really can take your power and build something beautiful. I'm Lori Rivers. I'm your host, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Awake Space Astrology Podcast.